because to this day, he doesn't want anything to do with Bigfoot. He won't even spend any significant amount of time out in the wilderness. Like, even if he just wants to hunt or fish, he won't even do that. Now, this happened 5 years ago. He did ask me to, he said, if you want to share this story, you can, but don't use my real name. And he also requested not to share the photos. He kept the photos, and I didn't deny his request. So, but just a little side note, when I mentioned that in the morning when the sun had come up and we peeked out the tent and we looked and everything was clear, when I went back to my little campsite, because remember, I had set up about 150 yards away, my campsite was trashed. I mean, just trashed. Everything was just scattered, like just absolutely vandalized. And we were the only 2 humans out there, so.
When he saw the bodies moving outside of the mesh, did he have any idea of how many there were?
He definitely said more than one, but he did not give me a definitive number.
Okay.
So, and so I didn't see anything, but clearly something had happened, and it was unbelievably frightening to such a point that, this just good fella, just a good guy, will no longer have anything to do with not just with Bigfoot research, but he doesn't really like to go outdoors that much anymore, from what I know. So
yeah, we've actually heard that a few times from people.
Yeah, I mean, now let me say this: I am nowhere near the level of you guys. I really admire what you guys have put together, but I clearly have a passion for this. But I got to be honest with you, guys. I was up in the North Georgia mountains just a month ago, and I didn't have an encounter, but I just was. Every time I saw some strange, tree break formations, or I heard what sounded like wood knocking, I was getting frightened myself. And I'm not sure if I'm, people who have a passion for this kind of stuff, they say, God, I really want to have an encounter, but I got to be honest, I don't think I want one. I don't as much. I've been reading books about this creature since I was a kid. And I've gone to the extent to where now I'm getting out in the field, and I hope to follow in your footpath, because you guys have done so well for yourselves. But I got to be honest, I'm not quite sure if I really am going to achieve that, because I don't think I want to encounter one of these things. I really don't. They're hostile, they're short-tempered, and they will not hesitate to kill.
Wes and I, neither one wanted the encounters that we had. And I'm sure Wes will agree that had I had the option, I would have chosen not to have had the encounters.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's what I've got. And like I said, I don't want to just throw it all away and give up. But at the same time, I just feel like, I guess from here on out, I guess the underlying message of what happened is, don't do what we did. First of all, don't go unless you're going in a group, and please have a sidearm with you, because we didn't, and not that we needed it, but God forbid if you've got to defend yourself,
just in case.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, you got to be smart about this.
Yeah, I mean, big time, and like I said, I'm the first one to stand up, put my hand up, and say, hey, look, don't do what we did, because it's a miracle nobody got hurt, So,
hey, Dan, it's Shannon.
Hello.
I just want to say that in talking to you, my investigative side kind of took over, and we had email conversations back and forth, and I just want to say to the listeners that if something really happened to these guys, because Dan really stuck up for his friend. And when I was like, hey, do you have the photos? And I wasn't really persistent, but I was pushing a little bit. And he's like, no, I promised him that I wouldn't release the photos, and I wouldn't and I never pressured him for a name, but he really stuck to his guns. And I think that, you know, the terror that night really has come across. So I appreciate you calling in, Dan.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And it's,
Yeah,
and it's very important to protect people that want to be anonymous in this.
Yeah.
I can pretty much guarantee, even though I haven't spoken to him in a long time, he probably would. He, you know, I know he wouldn't mind me sharing the story, but he probably would not want anything to do with it. So, and that's why I protected his name as well.
Yeah.
Dan, the night,
I'm sorry, what was that?
the day after all of this happened, you guys packed
Mhm.
up and left, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. After I salvaged my campsite, which was just absolutely trashed. I don't have any proof or evidence to say who or what did it, but I think you could probably put two and two together on that one.
Yeah, generally what we find is, you know, if you guys probably would have stayed another night or a couple more nights, you probably would have seen the creatures. They probably would have ramped up past destroying your camp, shaking the tent. This was kind of an aggressive move to get you guys to move along. And the fact that you guys left is probably the best thing. I think if you guys would have stayed, things would have ramped up.
Right,
in the
they
situation.
were working up their courage.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, it clearly we left, but thinking about staying just frightens me to no end. And you know what? And I have to say, it frightens me to no end to think about staying at all, because just a moment ago I had mentioned how I was camping in the North Georgia mountains just a month ago, and every little thing that I heard, which of course is not going to be Sasquatch, but every little thing I heard just got me just paranoid, and that part's a little frustrating because I don't want to be the paranoid type, but I mean, even if you put that aside, in my amateur evaluation, these creatures they are hostile, short-tempered, and they are not to be messed with in any way, shape, or fashion. And if you're going to do those kind of outings, clearly you guys will probably do a lot better than what we did, because what we did was stupid, and like I said, it's a wonder no one got hurt.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you guys did the
fascinating.
right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it was a fascinating encounter. We sure appreciate you calling in, Dan, and sharing it with us. We definitely appreciate what a night. I can't even imagine going through. Well, I can't
Hey, Wes,
imagine
can
going
I
through.
ask you one question?
No. I'm just joking. Of course you can.
I just want to talk about Honobia. I had a question about Honobia.
Sure.
I think I sent you this message on Facebook. I can't remember if I did or not. I could look it up, but I know the story about the siege at Honobia. I know about that, where it kind of comes to a peak where they have the guns out. They're taking shots. Apparently, one of the creatures was hit. Someone there had witnessed a blood trail, but the creature never really went down. My question, Wes, is did you hear what happened 2 hours later after that had that?
Actually, Mike did kill the creature, and another one
Oh, he
came
did?
and picked it up and took it away. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was getting to, because I didn't know this until just recently, but apparently a logging truck driver was driving down this logging trail. Now, this was 2 hours after it had all happened. He saw what he claims were multiple creatures carrying the dead creature.
Right.
Right.
And I believe isn't that what Mike said, that it took it a while to die. It was making some pretty nasty noises, blood gurgling and such. And then there were a number of the creatures, and one of them picked it up and they walked off with it.
Right.
Yeah, they went out.
And that's the part I was asking about. Did you know that was witnessed by a logging truck driver? I didn't know that.
No, I hadn't heard that.
Okay.
No, I hadn't heard that either. No, they shot it. They watched it die. They heard it die.
Yeah.
And they actually went out to get the creature. They were going to drag it back to the house. And they were kind of bum rushed by a bunch of them. And so that's when they went back to the house with their rifles and just waited for the worst to happen. But nothing actually happened that night. the creatures, they watched the rest of the creatures drag the one off that they had actually shot. But I'd never heard that story about the logging, the truck driver that seen them.
Yeah, I didn't either. And that's why I was asking. So, okay.
Yeah.
Well, guys, listen, I appreciate the time. Listen, you guys are awesome. I don't care what the website costs. I'm on it, and I'll keep in touch with you.
We appreciate it. Yeah, thank you, Dan.
Okay.
Fascinating account. Definitely fascinating.
Very much
account.
so.
Yeah. Funny, I just lost the chat room. So
Oh, yeah.
you're
It's gonna be a riot.
yeah, it's gonna be one of those nights.
Uh-huh.
Gotta like everything else
You gotta
in
work
life.
for it, guys.
Yeah. Like everything else in life, you gotta roll with the punches.
That's right.
Now let me close this out here. No, fascinating account. It makes you. I think a lot of that was intimidation. It was time to leave for them to leave, and that was their way of making them leave.
I wonder I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I knew what he was going through being out there camped, because we went through that when we were about 17 or 18, out near the Nisqually River. But that group wasn't real aggressive, even though it pulled one of my buddies partway out of the tent. We don't think, let go of him when it realized it was something alive. We think they were just, and the same thing, he mentioned the bacon. Well, we had, pork and beans and hot dogs. And I think any foods that smell or have a strong odor to them, might attract something like that. But, it could have been a campfire as much as anything.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have done like they did and, separated myself into an individual camp and my buddy over there. And just for a lot of reasons. I mean, there's a lot of wackos out these days. I mean, safety in numbers always. But that's a very scary environment to be in, especially if one of these things or more of them are around there. And in their situation, it sounded like that, like you said, with that escalation. They came in to check them out. They knew there was food. And had they stayed there, those events would have ramped up and probably become a lot more aggressive.
Well, it's always their choice. Like, they're always in control. Like, we always talk about, like he brought up this siege of Hunabi and how, Will, you brought up the fact that he did in fact shoot one, but the others came in and took it away. Well, they might have only seen that one that they shot, but there's always one surrounding them. So they seem to always be, for the most part, in control. And, if you have two campers, they're basically just sitting ducks if the Sasquatch choose them to be sitting ducks.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It makes me think of like people. When people are going to fight, you always see, and I go back to, because I spent so many years as a bouncer, and I've seen it time and time again, guys will push each other's buttons to see if, are you going to bite? Or are you going to bark? What are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, and I hate to liken it to Sasquatch, but I think that a lot of times with Sasquatch, it's kind of shaking the tent for 15 seconds, destroying the other camp. Are you going to come out shooting? What are you going to do? Like the encounter Woody and I had, it was a Mexican standoff. Who's going to react first to who? And then whatever happens, happens.
We should probably bring Mark Dobbs on again to talk about that, because there was the incident in Texas we talked about with the kid, the 15-year-old on the bike, and how the creature was moving its lips up and down, showing its teeth at him. And Mark said that's, and anthropologists talk about that. Primates do that. They call it a lip flip. And other behaviors are that also. They're, rather than fighting, they'll do these displays, at each other or whatever the opponent is, to try to intimidate, like you said, kind of to see what they're going to do. And if you don't do anything, that's sort of like backing down in a way. So when they didn't do anything, and many of the witnesses we've talked to that were in a situation where there was some kind of a challenge and they didn't do anything, and you're also in that situation. That's why actually I am too. that in essence is backing down from the challenge. So that in these cases, the Sasquatch is sort of the winner of that challenge, and that's why it doesn't escalate.
Right.
Well, and hearing Will, you say that, and Wes has said this too, with you guys' experiences, you'll raise your hand and go, I'd probably rather not have been in that situation. I feel pretty arrogant being the one on the show going, oh yeah, I want to see one. It would be really amazing, and I would be humbled. And like, yeah, you'll be humbled, but you'll be like crapping your britches because it'll change your life,
I jokingly say underwear changing moment, but I'll tell you what, in that moment, you definitely, that losing bowel control is not out of the question.
Absolutely. I feel arrogant saying that sometimes. I feel bad because we'll get all these stories, including you two, and it's changed your life.
You know what the feeling is like? And for anybody out there that's actually, rigged on a helicopter and had it drop, or even like, let's say a ride at the fair, where all of a sudden you drop really quick and your stomach kind of feels like it's down to your feet.
Mm-hmm.
When you're standing near one of these things, that's what happens to you. It's just like, for me, I went cold. My stomach, all of a sudden, it dropped. It felt like it was in my shoes. That's the best I can explain that feeling.
Yeah.
Except in a fair, you're in a controlled environment. Out there, you're not really in a controlled environment. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you have a question or you want to share an encounter, the number is 646-716-8791. And I promise the audience I will get to the encounter that we had recorded earlier in the week where a lady's car was charged by one of these creatures. But for now, let's go to Norm. Norm, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, and thanks for having me. And I gotta say, this is an awesome show. I mean, I've been listening now for probably the past month, and I can just relate so much to a lot of what's being said, especially that PG&E guy who was just talking earlier. And I tell you, this is like Alcoholics Anonymous. This is like the 12 steps of Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I really enjoy your show. But anyways, I'm from California originally, born and raised in Los Angeles. And during the summertime, I used to go visit my dad in San Luis Obispo County. And there's a town over there called Paso Robles. I don't know if you ever heard of it. But I used to go there during the summertime. And in '84, I went there. And so it was nighttime, and me and my stepbrothers and a couple of friends, we hopped in this, it was a 67 Fastback Barracuda. And so we hopped in it, and we headed down to an area called Cascadero. It isn't too far from Paso Robles. There's a lake over there called the Cascadero Lake. And one thing about Cascadero Lake is, and the reason why we used to like going there a lot was lots of freshwater clams and snails. And, we'd go there and get some and take them home and cook them. That was the thing. And one thing I have to always remember is that I used to see like a pile of freshwater clams and snail shells on the shore. I used to see that a lot. I never thought nothing of it, So we went there one night, and we pull up by the lake, and it must have been about maybe 20 yards from the shore. And we all get out of the car, and we were drinking some beer, and had a little reefer, and we're just having a good time. It's nighttime. I want to say there was a little bit of light. I can't remember if it was a full moon, but I do remember there was a little bit of a moon out, so you could see, just a bit like out in the dark. And I remember looking out on the lake, and looking out on the other side of the lake, I remember seeing like the searchlight looking for something on the other side of the lake. And so we're all looking at it, and we're like, wow, I wonder what that is, We just kind of, just wondering what it was, what was going on. And so everybody's standing standing around the car, and so I decided, well, I'm going to walk over to the shore. We're about 20 yards away, so I'm going to walk over to the shore and just get close to the lake, And so I get probably, I'd say maybe about 15 yards from the shore, and just as I'm getting close to it, off to my right, and I couldn't see it because it was dark, but this thing sounded like it was probably maybe 10 to 15 feet away from me. And I'll tell you this much: if you know that area, there are no bears, there are no wolves. There might be bobcats or mountain lions, but I've heard what they sound like. And what I heard that night, it couldn't have been one of those. It just couldn't have been. But it let out this roar that it reverberated through me. And it's funny because I'm 47 now, and I was about 17 at that time. So this is like 30 years ago. But I could still remember what it felt like. And I just remember it was this loud roar. It was a long roar too. It wasn't like just a short roar. It sounded like this thing had lungs. And it roared at me. And it just, I felt the it was like a deep bass going through my chest, And I just remember turning around and just looking it. And if you ever saw a 67 Barracuda Fastback, it's got a small window. And, I was so scared. I out through that window so fast and it locked the doors, and I forgot that my brothers were outside, And they're all yelling at me, open the door, open the door. And so, I scrambled and I unlocked the doors and, I let them in, and they're like, what the heck was that? I said, I don't know, man, but let's get out of here. But, to this day, we never knew what it was, I mean, we didn't see it, but I heard it. But one thing I will say is I don't believe it was a cougar or a mountain lion because, for one thing, I'm 5'10", and whatever this thing was that was roaring at me, it felt like it was roaring, like the roar was coming from my height, maybe even a little bit higher. And it just like coming at me, and it was close. I mean, I had to have been less than 10 yards away, and
well, that's very close.
Yeah, I mean, I was very close to this thing. I mean, it scared the crap out of me, and like I said, there's no bears in that area. There might be mountain lions, but see, there's no really mountainous areas around that area. There's hills, kind of like Little House on the Prairie area. And there are a lot of deer, I will say that. But
yeah, if you're pretty familiar with those animal noises, then you can rule those things out.
Yeah, exactly. And just like that other guy, two calls before me was saying, come from California, I've heard bears. We've been to Yosemite and Sequoia Kings Canyon National Park. At nighttime, we used to put food out, and the bears would come. We would hear them. We knew what they sounded like. We'd hear them off in the distance. It wasn't a bear. Besides, there's no bears in that area. But I mean, this thing put out a yell that just was so loud that it couldn't have been anything else. So I never knew what it was, and it's funny because I had always been enthralled with Bigfoot since I was a kid. I mean, I remember in in the 70s watching Boggy Creek, and I remember my mom gave me a book back in '77 about Bigfoot, and I read that. So I knew about the creature. I read about Albert Ostrom in Canada and all those events. So I knew about him. But at this time when this happened, it never dawned upon me that it possibly could have been that. I just thought, wow, that was just a freaky incident. And it was just unexplained. It never registered until later on in life when I thought about it. I said, well, you know what? If it was a mountain lion, more than likely it probably would have pounced on me before it growled, And
Right.
again, where the voice was coming from, it wasn't like 2 or 3 feet off the ground. I mean, this thing was it was up there, So the only thing I could, think of was that, and then again, I've heard like some of these internet tracks of, Bigfoot exactly what I heard. And, I've told a couple of people this, and they tell me I'm crazy, there's no such thing, and blah, blah, blah. And I just kind of like, well, like, this is what I heard, and, it's got to be out there. I mean, if there's so many, fakes or hoaxes out there, well, then there has to be a real thing,
Right.
But yeah, like I said, it was a brief encounter, but it was a scary encounter. And it's not till, later on in life when I hear all these incidents, and I got to say, your show is great. I mean, it really helps me to, connect with what's out there and what's really going on in the Bigfoot world, and that it's not just, it's not just a fluke that these things are out there, but it actually is something, out there. And I hate that we haven't got any conclusive, concrete evidence. But I mean, hey, with all the stories and with all the incidences and encounters going on, something's got to be. I mean, if let's just say 1,000 of them are out there and 999 of them are fake, well, one of them's got to be real,
Right. And the one thing about the show is it's become a real good place for all of us to connect.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, and that's what I feel like. I mean, when I listen to you guys and listen to your encounters, especially yours, Will's, and even Woody's, I can sort of connect because it's the situations where you don't expect something to happen, and then when it happens, it kind of throws you off, and you're wondering, what the heck is this, And then,
Right.
afterwards, when you kick back and contemplate and meditate on it, you can only come up with one conclusion. That's, it's got to be this Bigfoot or this Sasquatch, And that's the only thing that I could come up with is that it's got to be that. And then once again, when I realized that in that area there's lots of deer, and then of course we're here by the lake, and there's all these shell, clams, and, so, yeah, I could have possibly came up to it when I was eating on this stuff, and I just got too close to it, and it just let out a growl, letting me know, hey man, you're too close to me, get any closer, and we're gonna dance.
Yeah, very possible. Very possible.
I took off. But no, I'm grateful for your delicious show. I mean, it's a great show. Keep it up. I look forward to December 1st coming along. I'm definitely going to be a big subscriber. But I want to say, just keep up the good work and just keep up the great work. But thanks for letting me be on and telling my story, my encounter, and relating to my encounter because. I even tell my wife that she thinks I'm crazy, at least I can talk to you guys.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yeah, you kind of relate with me and say, well, no, I think, you got all 52 cards, it's just, these things just happen. But once again, thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks, Norm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, Norm. We really do appreciate you calling in and sharing your encounter. What's funny about Norm's encounter is he's within 10 yards of something growling and vocalizing at him. And if it's a mountain lion or if it's a bear and you're that close and they're vocalizing at you, you're in trouble. It's not a warning to back off. It's usually a warning, I'm coming at you and you're going to pay the price now for getting that close. Especially
that
now.
Close, they're going to run if they're that close normally. And you're right, if they're going to vocalize, then they're probably going to attack.
Right.
Yeah.
Scary encounter.
Very much.
Well, let's jump to, I'll tell you what, let's jump to Brian. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for calling in. Did you want to share your encounter?
Sure. It's not really your typical encounter like I've heard a lot of other people's stories. This happened about a little over 20 years ago in North Texas, a small town called Bowie. And it was actually inside the city limits. I had been at a Christmas party earlier that night, and after that party had ended, a few of my other friends, we were going to get together and continue the festivities. And so when I arrived at one of their houses, got out of the truck, and I'd seen one of my friend's cars was already parked there. So got out, and my girlfriend was with me, and we heard this noise coming from behind us. And it sounded like it was across the street at another house. And I hate making the sound because it sounds funny, but I called it kind of a very poor imitation of a duck.
Now I want to hear it.
Me too.
All right, it was kind of like this. Wow, wow. I mean, it was just, and I thought it was my friends over there. I thought they were hiding over in the bushes of this house, and I figured they were just trying to play a joke on me. So I started walking that direction, and I looked over, and I noticed my girlfriend. She had stopped walking. She had just kind of frozen in her tracks. And I didn't really think a whole lot of it. Well, she just doesn't walk over there, so I kept going. And about that time, another guy that had been at the other party, he pulls up to the stop sign beside this house, and he's sitting there, and another car is coming, and it was another guy from the party, but he was making a right turn, and he was going to be turning right beside this guy sitting at the stop sign. And he slammed on his brakes and stopped kind of mid-turn. And their trucks were fairly close to each other, and I thought, well, they're talking to each other. So, and I was already getting pretty close to them, so I thought, well, I'll just go see what they're doing. And about that time, they both took off. The guy sitting at the stop sign, he took off in reverse, and the other guy, he continued in his turn, and I thought they were racing because they took off really fast. So the guy that was going in reverse, he stopped, and there's an alley that goes behind this house that I was walking towards, and he took off down that alley. And the other guy kept going until he got to the next cross street, and then he turned down that street. Well, I was pretty puzzled about what I'd just seen, so well, I'll go see what they're doing. Got back in my truck, and my girlfriend, she was still quiet. She hadn't said a word yet. And get back down to the other house where the other Christmas party was at. And the guy that had taken off in reverse and gone down the alley, he was already back at this house. And I got there about the same time as the other guy in the other truck did. And when he got out, they both just, did you see that? You know, what the hell was that? I never saw what they were talking about. But anyway, this is what they said happened. As they both got to that intersection, they said something huge had walked in between their trucks, and it was walking towards me, and I was walking towards it. They said that they thought it had a white sheet over it because it looked like it had a sheet over its head, but it didn't go down all the way. They said they could see these hairy legs and pig feet hanging out the bottom. And anyway, when they both took off, they were chasing it because it had basically it got in between them, and then it turned and ran. And when the guy went down the alley after it, he said he lost it. It just completely outpaced the truck. He said he got up to 40 miles an hour going down that alley.
Good Lord.
So anyway, it was kind of an interesting event, and I wasn't really sure what to think about it. The main thing I didn't understand why everybody there saw this thing and I didn't.
You were in the same area when they were?
Yeah, I mean, I was, of course, the only thing separating me from my girlfriend was the pickup bed. So there was probably 5 feet in between us. And of course, she saw it and stopped walking. The other 2 guys, of course, they were a lot closer to it, but they were in their trucks.
Right.
And I was just in the street walking to it. Anyway.
That photo I was just laughing about it. I know the three of us talked about it. There's a photo going around on Facebook, and I laugh every time I laugh every time I see it. The two monkeys,
Yeah.
they just look like they got done smoking the stickiest of the icky, and they're laying their heads back. And the title of it says that we lit a fire, we contacted the Sasquatch people, and we asked them to make an appearance. And when you look at the photo, it's these two stoners with their heads back, and they look like they're in comment. And they didn't really light a fire, though. It's typical stoner behavior. They lit a candle and said, "Oh, we lit a fire."
And then you see these that, and it actually looks like a light bulb instead of a lit candle.
It almost does. You're right, Will.
So for the audience out there, I'll paint the picture. These two people sitting in the woods, their heads are cocked back on trees, their eyes are shut. There's a candle sitting on a rock. There's arrows pointing down, and then it looks like someone photoshopped in this smoke of the Sasquatches. And the Sasquatches looked all educated and everything. They're sitting there like it almost looks like they have pipes in their mouth, and they're all sitting around. It was the hilarious thing I've ever seen. It was the most hilarious thing I've ever seen.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And they had to have the big arrows so that you would be sure to see them.
Huge. Here they are. There's the Squatches cloaking.
I'm sure they are.
Pretty hilarious. I'll put that up on the fan page. Well, let's jump to. I'll tell you what. We'll take one more call, and then I'll play the interview we did earlier in the week. I'll tell you what. Let's go to, or I might take two more calls. Let's jump to Jack. Jack, welcome to the show.
Thank you. In another part of the mountain, and I tried another look, and I've got a bionic ear. It's kind of like a satellite dish with a microphone in the middle of it, and I heard some tree knocks, so I hurried up and connected the digital recorder. And I did a few more looks and could hear a dog barking way off in the distance, but no more tree knocks. When I got home here a couple weeks ago, I played it, and right at the beginning, they're way in the distance. You could hear two wolves.
And so I thought, wow, these two things happened probably 10 miles apart in that area. And so I sent those two whoops to a friend who took them in and cut out the dog barks and just kept the whoops. And then he sent me back 2 other recordings that he had received. And they all 3 sound almost identical. So I'm wondering what you guys, think of the whistle and that kind of thing. And then I have one more encounter to share.
Well, the whistle was something the Sasquatches have done for a long, long time. In fact, the Indians talk about that much more than any other type of vocalization. So that's pretty normal.
Is that kind of like a locator, I'm over here kind of thing, you think? Or?
It's possible. It's really hard telling at this point.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, when you hear these other 2 whoops, you hear a dog bark. It's probably, it sounds like it's close to where the whoops came from. I'm wondering if they maybe make a dog bark noise.
Yeah, they imitate a lot of things. And one thing to remember too, people like to generalize when it comes to these things, but like with our chimps and gorillas, other primates, is they might make very similar sounds throughout the species, but their group specific is towards the meanings. Mm-hmm. So what one group does might be something entirely different to another group.
Okay. Yeah, those whoops were a ways away from where we heard the tree knocks. The tree knocks were closer to us.
Yeah, I like that.
And I've heard tree knocks before. So it was a lot of fun to be able to hear those responses, and I don't know if it's the whoop I'm doing or if it's just, a coincidence. We had another encounter. The place that we camp is out in the woods, and it's right by a creek, and we had one of the nephews brought his girlfriend and their 3-year-old boy, and he was always running around camp making all kinds of noise and yells and screams. And one of the nights, they had actually taken off and gone to Las Vegas for a couple of days. But the night they left, we were sitting around a campfire, and just before it got dark, 3 of us heard it sounded like a kid crying off in the woods. And we kept listening to it, and it sounded again just like a little kid crying. And later, when it got dark, we kept hearing noises near us in the camp area. And my 2 brothers thought, no, that's a bear. It's not a Bigfoot. And I thought, well, I've never heard a bear make a crying noise. So they finally got really concerned and jumped in. One of the brothers jumped in his truck and drove around that area and didn't see anything, but it stopped. So I'm wondering again if they're mimicking, or what the reason for, Bigfoot coming in, because the next morning, Chuck and I walked around and we found a footprint.
Yeah, that kid crying that you mentioned, Jack. I've heard that a couple times, and it's always disturbing when you hear it, because it's not. It doesn't sound quite like a kid crying, but that's the only thing I can like. That's the only thing I can liken it to. Why they do that, I don't know. I know previous caller had talked about the siege of Hunabi, and one of the things that they used to do out there is they used to mimic him calling for his dogs, especially when other people were at the house. They would be out in the woods mimicking him, calling for his dogs. And I don't know if it was to draw them out into the woods for a trap. I don't know why they would do that. I've heard that strange kid crying mimicking that you talk about, though.
You know, and I'm wondering, that little kid was always taking off, and he'd take off out in the woods, and you know, we were really trying to keep an eye on him because I was afraid if he ran out there, you know, I didn't know what would happen to him.
You know, there's an encounter that David Pilates talks about in one of his books to where the girl had no recollection. Excuse me. I swear I'm still fighting this cold, so I apologize to everyone for coughing. David Pilates had mentioned this encounter that this little girl had heard. It sounded like a child crying, and that's the last thing she remembers. They found her like 30 miles away and over 2 mountain ranges, but she had no recollection of how she had gotten there or anything. But she had heard this. The only description she had given was, I had heard what sounded like another child crying. And so I went to it, and that's the last thing she remembers within that encounter. So if it's a trap or if it's something that they're doing, I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting. This last July, I was up in Washington. Chuck and I went up there, and we were up around Hoodsport and Skokomish. I think it's Skokomish tribal area. Anyhow, there's a road up there called Hamma Road in the Olympic Peninsula. Do you know where that is?
I know the area.
Okay, we drove up that road, and about a mile or two up in the road, there was about a 30-foot tree, green leaves, green tree knocked down across the road. And so we jumped out and started looking around, and it was about 8 inches at the base around. And we started looking around and found some footprints in that area. And the grass was all knocked down around the tree trunk. And so when we got done there, we headed up the road about a half a mile at the most to a corner, and there was a woman standing there. Her car was parked there. She was just standing looking up the mountain. And so Chuck asked her, "Have you seen any Bigfoot in this area?" And she just laughed at us. And so we turned around, came back and looked at the tree some more. And I did my whoops. And after, probably 5 or 8 minutes, I heard a tree knock, 3 tree knocks down by where the woman was. And then we had a single tree knock right by, it was close to us. It was in the trees. I don't know, 50 feet away, 50 yards maybe. And so the next thing we knew is that woman and her husband came flying down the road and stopped where we were and wanted to know what that noise was. And I said, "Did you hear 3 tree knocks?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Did you hear a tree knock down here?" "Yes." "We don't know what that is, but we're leaving." And they took off. We never saw them, but it's kind of interesting. They knew right where we were.
Oh, come here.
They knew where that
Let me
woman
pet you
was.
while this saves.
But
Let me
why
pet
the
you.
tree knots? I guess they're
Go ahead.
talking to each other, huh? Warning each other that we, there's
Good boy.
stop,
There you
or I don't know.
go. There you go.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I think a lot of times with the tree knocks that it's a hunting behavior that they do. I think the general consensus that we've come up with is it has to do with hunting. But Jack, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I know we're running short on time. I wanted to play this interview that we did earlier in the week and get everyone's feedback. Again, if you want to call in, we're running short on time, but if you want to call in, the number is 646-716-8791. And here's an interview we did earlier in a week with a lady that says a Sasquatch charged her car. So take a listen. Tell me what you think.
We didn't really get much of a briefing on your encounter, so I'm gonna let you just tell us what happened. I guess a little background. Maybe at first would be good. Just maybe what region of the country you're in, and how long ago this incident happened.
Okay, no problem. I'm in Ohio, and this happened in the fall of 2008, and my 14-year-old daughter was with me. And just jump in when you have questions, because I tend to chatter. But what happened was we were just out for a ride. And we were riding down this one road. And the road at the one end is sort of like, the houses are kind of like sparse. And it's more like kind of country, sort of. And people out there have like maybe like a horse, a goat, a cow, a pig, nothing major. And so we're driving down the road, and my daughter now, and this is why it's important. She's on the right-hand side. We're driving up. I'm on the left-hand side. She's on the right-hand side, the passenger side, of course. So she says, "Hey, Mom, what's that up there?" And I said, and I looked up, and the way the land is, there's a knoll, and about 100 yards off, all I see is like a head, okay, like a figure of a head, and there's this like hair waving in the wind. I'm thinking, oh hell no, this is a horse. And somebody's horse got away, and I'm gonna have to slow down. And I started to slow down, and it was coming at a pretty good clip. And I thought, I better put my car in park, because the last thing I need to do is hit somebody's head or livestock, and then we're gonna have, because I'm expecting somebody to run after it. And I figured, we're going to get into a confrontation. I don't want that, So I put my car in park, and so I look, and I'm looking, I'm going, it's getting closer. I'm like, wow, that's not moving like a horse. And I thought, okay. So then it started getting closer, and I was like, maybe that's an Afghan dog, with long hair. And I thought, maybe that's what it is now, because it's on all fours. I thought, So it gets about 40 feet away, and I'm going, wait a minute, that is not a damn dog. And then my daughter's like, Mom, what is that? I'm like, I'm not real sure. And so it comes up, and it's probably about 30 feet from us. And it's right by a house. It's coming over the hill from the house, and there's a garage. And it starts to go in front of the garage, and then it just stops and looks right at us, and I'm like, uh-oh. And all of a sudden it comes charging down the hill, and I'm going, oh my God. My heart was I can't even tell you how scared I was. Now, it didn't come at the door. It was coming it's going to come in front of the car, but it was coming fast down the hill, and my daughter's freaking. She screamed, Mom, what is it? What is it? Oh my God, what's going on? And she is flipping, and I'm trying to get her to calm down, because I'm already wanting to flip out, because I'm not sure what it is yet. And so it keeps coming, and she is she is all over the car. I'm trying to calm her down, and it comes right in front of her car. And when I mean in front of my car, it was so freaking close. It was so close. It was so close that I could see how you have a dog that has maybe coarse curly hair, and you shave it down for the summer, and it has that kind of waves to it. That's what the fur looked like. Okay, that's how close we were. And then the hair hung down off of the arms and the legs. Okay, and it was so close that you could see on its palms, its hands, it was running, on all fours, but like when it had its hands like running on its knuckles, like, or whatever, you know, you could see like half the palm, and I could actually see the creases in the palms of the hands. Okay, little ears, kind of a smaller head, built like a basketball player. I couldn't even look at his face because I was like, wait a minute, there's no hooves, there's no paws, that's feet, and that's hands. And I just was like trying to process it, and I'm trying to calm my daughter down because what I'm worried about is,
All right.
is somebody accidentally hitting the horn or accidentally kicking in gear, you know. And when it went in front of me, it was like, and this is going to sound crazy, but it was like the world stood still, and it was like the Matrix, you know, like real slow. And it didn't acknowledge us. I mean, it acted like, hey, yeah, whatever, and walked right in front of us like we weren't even there. And I was like, whoa. And my daughter, she's still flipping. And so I'm trying to calm her down. And it went ahead, and it went like, I looked out on my peripheral vision, and I could see that it kept on going down the hill, and there's woods on the other side. But I'll be damned if I was moving my head, because I was going to see if mom and dad was down there. Because that's the last thing I wanted to see. And that's the last thing I wanted my daughter to see, because she was already like